In a temple in Egypt, carved deep into solid granite, there is a pattern made of overlapping circles. Each circle the same size, each one touching the center of 6 others. Perfectly symmetrical, mathematically precise. It would take a modern engineer with laser tools to replicate this with the precision the ancient builders achieved by hand. This pattern is called the flower of life. And it doesn't just appear in Egypt. It appears in temples in China, in synagogues in Israel, in mosques across the Middle East, in artwork from civilizations that never met each other, separated by oceans and thousands of years. Today, we're going to find out why a single geometric pattern obsessed nearly every major civilization in human history. Let's understand what you're actually looking at. Take one circle. Surround it with 6 identical circles, each one passing through the center point of the one before it. Continue this process outward, layer after layer. What emerges is the flower of life, a pattern so mathematically perfect that every single shape in what's called sacred geometry can be derived from it. The vesica pieces we covered weeks ago, contained within it. The hexagon, contained within it. Even the seed of a more complex shape called Metatron's cube, said to contain every 3-dimensional geometric form that exists in the universe. This isn't decoration. This is closer to a mathematical Genesis document. A single pattern that contains the blueprint for nearly every other sacred shape humans have ever drawn. The oldest confirmed example of the flower of life was found at the Temple of Osiris in Abydos, Egypt. It's carved directly into granite, using a technique that has puzzled Egyptologists for decades. Granite is one of the hardest stones on Earth. The precision of these circles suggests either an extraordinary amount of patient hand carving, or tools far more sophisticated than we typically associate with ancient Egyptian civilization. Carbon dating of the surrounding temple structure places the carvings at potentially over 6,000 years old, though the exact dating of the carving itself remains debated among archaeologists. What is not debated, someone with extraordinary patience and mathematical understanding dedicated significant resources to permanently carving this exact pattern into one of the hardest materials available to them. They wanted it to last forever, and it has. Here's the detail that should genuinely unsettle you. The flower of life pattern doesn't just appear in Egypt. It appears in ancient Assyrian artwork, in Chinese temples, in Indian religious sites, in Japanese family crests called mon, in Spanish churches built during the Moorish period, in Celtic stone carvings, civilizations with no shared language, no trade routes connecting them, no possible cultural exchange given the centuries and oceans separating them. There are 2 explanations historians and mathematicians offer. The mathematical explanation: this pattern emerges naturally from the simplest possible geometric construction. Any civilization that experimented with circles and a compass would eventually, almost inevitably, discover this exact pattern. The mystical explanation, favored by sacred geometry practitioners: this pattern represents something fundamental about the structure of reality itself. Something the human mind recognizes intuitively regardless of culture, because it reflects the literal architecture of existence. Both explanations agree on one thing: this pattern was never random. This is where the story moves from ancient history into something measurable right now in front of you. The hexagonal packing pattern found at the core of the flower of life appears throughout the natural world with startling consistency. Honeycomb structures built by bees follow this exact geometric logic. The most efficient possible way to pack identical shapes with minimal material. Snowflakes form along six-fold symmetry, mathematically related to the same circle packing principles. Even the compound eye structure of certain insects follows hexagonal organization derived from this same geometric foundation. And inside your own eye, the photoreceptor cells in your retina are arranged in a pattern that mathematicians have noted bears a striking structural resemblance to flower of life packing. Nature, independent of any human culture, appears to default to this same geometric solution again and again when efficiency and structural integrity matter most. Within the flower of life pattern, if you connect the center points of all 13 circles with straight lines, you create what's known as Metatron's cube, named after the archangel Metatron in Jewish mystical tradition. This resulting shape is said to contain the outline of every regular three-dimensional geometric solid that can exist. The cube, the tetrahedron, the octahedron, the dodecahedron, and the icosahedron. These 5 shapes are known as the Platonic solids, and ancient Greek philosophers, particularly Plato himself, believed each one corresponded to a fundamental element of the universe: earth, air, fire, water, and the cosmos itself. Modern crystallography has confirmed that these exact 5 shapes do represent the only possible, perfectly symmetrical, three-dimensional forms in Euclidean geometry. Ancient mystics encoded mathematical truths into religious symbolism, truths that modern mathematics would later prove using tools and notation that didn't exist for thousands of years after the symbol was first carved. So why does any of this matter outside of academic curiosity? Sacred geometry practitioners across cultures and centuries have made a consistent claim that contemplating these patterns produces a measurable psychological effect. A sense of calm, a feeling of connection to something larger than individual identity. Modern psychology has a name for a closely related phenomenon: the fractal fluency hypothesis, which suggests human brains are particularly soothed by visual patterns that echo structures found throughout nature. Because our visual systems evolved specifically to process these exact kinds of repeating, efficient geometric forms. In other words, your brain may be neurologically rewarded for looking at the flower of life, not because of mysticism, but because you evolved inside a world built from this exact mathematics. The honeycomb, the snowflake, the cellular structure of your own eye. When ancient builders carved this pattern into stone, they may have been doing something more profound than worship. They may have been holding up a mirror to the literal architecture of existence. and asking us to recognize ourselves in it. The flower of life has been called many things across history. A religious symbol, a meditation tool, a mathematical curiosity, a blueprint of creation itself. But perhaps the most accurate description is simpler than any of those. It's a reminder, carved into the hardest stone available to ancient builders, that the patterns governing a snowflake, a honeycomb, your own eyes, and the structure of three-dimensional space itself are not separate mysteries. They're the same mystery wearing different shapes. There's one more feminine sacred symbol we haven't yet explored, one representing not mathematics, but the three actual ages every woman who has ever lived passes through. And unlike geometry, this one comes with real controversy attached. That one is next.